All right. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 14th presentation of Avalanche Canada's webinar series. Good evening. My name is Alex Cooper, and I'm your producer for the evening. Nancy Geismar is online and will be the moderator and looking out for your questions in the comments and the chat today. We're stoked you are all here tonight. COVID has meant that we're not able to delivering face-to-face outreach presentations in person, which is a shame. But the silver lining is that we've been able to reach so many people through these online webinars this year. Our mission is to help educate backcountry users so you can go out and play safe in the mountains. We want you to know more, go further, and come home. First, we'd like to thank our sponsors. We are very thankful for their financial support for us during these challenging economic times and for working with us to reach so many backcountry users this winter. All right, before we begin, I've just got a few housekeeping notes to let you know about. Everyone is muted automatically. There will be an opportunity to ask questions during the presentation. To do so, you can click on the raise hand icon on the GoTo dashboard, and I will unmute you so you can ask a question, or you can ask a question in the chat box, which is found on the GoTo dashboard. Oh, just hearing people saying, okay. All right. Now, tonight, our presentation is choosing terrain. Terrain choice is always the answer to having a safe, fun day out in the backcountry. When the avalanche hazard is high or you're concerned about a certain avalanche problems, you want to be able to recognize which terrain is safe and, more importantly, which terrain is not safe. And you're in for a real treat tonight because Avalanche Canada senior forecaster Grant Helgeson is going to lead you through a variety of images and exercises to help you hone your terrain choice skills. Grant will be presenting various scenarios of terrain combined with the danger rating. Your questions are welcome and will be most valuable if they pertain to the current scenario. So don't be bashful about either raising your hand or typing a question in the chat box. We'll give a chance to ask questions after each scenario. Grant has been, he brings a wealth of experience to us tonight. He's been a forecaster for 13 years in both Canada and the United States. And I gotta say, we're really lucky that he moved up north to work with us up here. He's been pursuing his own winter backcountry pursuits on snowmobile and skis for probably 2 decades now. He's seen a lot of terrain over that time, and he's going to share with you lots of useful information to help you choose the best terrain for your day, for your outings. I'm going to pass it over to Grant now.
Great, thanks, Alex.
All right, take it away.
I'm just gonna get my screen queued up here. This is the crux of the evening. Oh, now you know what I'm really looking at. My other screen is where I'm gonna go skiing next. That's not the right screen that we want. That's actually great because it cues into exactly what we're going to talk about. Let's try this one. There we go. Okay, cool. I am Mr. Helgeson, Avalanche forecaster here at Avalanche Canada. Psyched to be with all of you tonight. This is a presentation that really came out of the professional curriculum. And part of the professional curriculum is that you get a bunch of ski guides and old Avalanche forecasters around, and they're putting up these different photos and pictures of terrain on course. They're putting it up there and you can't take it apart as a group during the course. It's really fun. I remember Ilya Storm taking some apart during my level 2, which was, gosh, a long time ago now, 15 years ago. And I really enjoyed it. And then we started to build these presentations out at Avalanche Canada, kind of bring that idea back to the recreational side of things. And it's fun. Normally we're in person, and this is the end of the evening, and I'm having you guys come up and giving you the kind of magic pen to draw around on the screen, and we're having like some back and forth by committee about what good decisions are, what bad decisions are, and I've got lots of prizes, but it's COVID, so nothing is the way it was. We're still gonna make this really fun, and we're gonna go through it. The thing that can really work for us here, we have Nancy looking at the chat screen right now. So if you can ask questions while we're going through these, we're gonna try and go through probably 4, maybe 5 of these images. But the idea is to make it work for you guys. So I really wanna answer your questions to the best of my ability and get those questions in here. It's unfortunate I can't be bribing anyone to the front of the stage with me tonight, but this is gonna have to do for these times. So here we go. So what we're gonna be doing here is I'm gonna put a photo like this up, and then we're gonna match terrain to the conditions. So I'm gonna start giving you some information about the avalanche forecast. And now this is just a refresher of the avalanche forecast. So danger ratings. What do danger ratings mean? Well, it's an overall indication of the danger level. High means obviously back way off. Considerable means that naturals are still running and human triggered avalanches are likely. We start getting into other danger ratings, which we'll talk a little bit about this evening. But that's just like kind of the first glance that you want to look at the forecast. Next is actually my favorite part of the forecast, which is avalanche character and the avalanche problems. So this is really the who, what, when, where, why, how likely, how big of the avalanche forecast. And this is where I think you get the most information out of the forecast. Now, oh great, just give me 1 second to queue up my highlighter here. Let's go with some this and highlighter. So we talk about elevation zones here at Avalanche Canada. In the chat, Alpine's pretty obvious. That means you're up in the Alpine, there's no trees around. That's kind of the land of ice and rock. Below tree line means that you are down in the trees. Does anyone have a stab at what tree line actually means? What does tree line mean to you? I think it's actually the thinnest band, thinnest vegetative band that we have in the avalanche forecast. I'm just gonna see if are there any brave souls who have volunteered an answer for what tree line is to them, Nancy?
Yeah, Grant, couple people, right around tree line, few trees, open meadows. Another one, the transition zone between alpine and tree line. Another one where trees turn into alpine, spaced out trees in higher elevations.
Yeah.
Where trees stop growing. So pretty much that's it. Yeah. Yeah.
And nailing it. Okay, this is great. Yeah. Tree line is that area where there's more open areas than trees. And there were so many great answers in there. Oh, thanks for playing along with me, guys. This is gonna make this fun. Okay, so yeah, there's more open areas than trees, but there's still trees. And we'll throw some ideas around that. Now, slope aspect. This is which way the slope that you're standing on faces. So if you're standing on a slope and you put your back to that slope and you get your compass dialed in, it's the way that the compass says that you're facing. That's what slope aspect means. Feel free to ask questions about that if you want. The chance of avalanches ranges from unlikely to certain, and that's indicated by this little dial over here. And what we do is actually we highlight which areas in bold for the likelihood of triggering that avalanche. So right now we're saying there's a persistent slab at all elevations on all slopes. And what that means actually is that when we light these up, everyone that's lit up is a slope that is in play. The chance of avalanches, and then how big. So size 1 is enough to knock a skier off their feet. Sledding size 1 really isn't that big a deal. You have such a powerful machine. Size 2 is enough to bury, injure, and kill a person. Size 3 is enough to destroy a car or a small pickup. Size 4 is enough to start destroying like a train car or a semi-truck, and then 5 is biblical, taking out hectares of forest and destroying small villages. That actually is the definition too, oddly enough. So that's what we're talking about here with avalanche problems. And this is really my favorite part of the forecast. This is where, as a forecaster, I get to talk to you and tell you exactly where I think these problems are. And then we tend to offer a piece of descriptor about it. So in this case, we've got a cohesive slab over a touchy surface or weakness buried in December. Avalanches on this layer are likely to be large and destructive, may fracture across surprisingly large areas, and it's particularly reactive in the southern part of the region. Remember, our regions are huge. One of our favorite things to do at the Conference of International Snow Dorks, known as ISSW, in Canada, is we take one of our regions and we put all of Switzerland inside of one of those regions, and they have hundreds of individual forecast regions. And then we all laugh about how big Canadian avalanche regions are and how variable they are. So we often will add information here in the forecast about the regional variability. So that's what's happening with avalanche problems there. Do we have any questions with avalanche problems while we're on this screen, Nancy?
Nothing's coming yet, Grant. I'll keep my eyes peeled.
Okay, that's great. So before we jump into these scenarios, I'm really curious to know who we're talking to this evening. I am a skier and a sledder, kind of in equal parts. I grew up ski racing and then have been sledding since, gosh, 2007 or something like that. Yeah, passionate about both things. Climbed ice for a while. Who's out there tonight? Are you folks skiing, splitboarding, snowshoeing? Are you riding sleds? Are you riding snow bikes? Are you ice climbers, or are you just hiking? We're gonna let this sit up there for a few minutes. These are all the wonderful ways we can enjoy the Canadian wilderness in winter. The one thing I don't do much of anymore is ice climbing. Revelstoke is not the greatest spot in the world to climb ice, although right now, but there's some cool flows in because it's so cold. 90% skiers, great, and just a few sledders. And I have a hunch that of those sledders, they're probably using them to go skiing and splitboarding. Cool. And then while we're here and we're taking some polls and we're getting to know each other a little bit, what's the level of education out there? Let's think about, so have you been to a webinar? Maybe you've had a chance to talk live. Maybe you've bought me a beer. Maybe you've taken an AST or Avalanche Skills Training Weekend course, our introductory course, level 1, or the AST2, which I will say, out of all the Avalanche courses I've done, the AST2 is far and away the most valuable course I've done, hands down, period. That's really how you get some good decision making for making choices as a recreationist in the mountains. And then we get into the Snow Academy CAA courses where you learn how to speak Snow Dork. Okay, great, a lot of AST1s, cool. And then 15% of us have just none or just a little. Okay, this is gonna be super fun. A few pros out there and a couple AST2s. I just wanna say for all you folks who have AST1, 60% of you folks out there, put an AST2 on your radar. That course is really where the rubber meets the road. I feel like AST1, our goal is basically to show you what is Avalanche terrain, what is not, and people just leave scared. AST2 is really where you can start putting all the pieces together and start learning how to make the kind of decisions we're gonna be talking about tonight. So, little plug there. Okay, coming back to it. Okay, so each of these, whoa, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Each of these interactive terrain exercises we're gonna be working through together. So each scenario contains the danger ratings, avalanche problems, the relevant weather, so we'll kind of talk about what happened with weather overnight, and a terrain photo. And I'm gonna be marking these things up and providing directions and all that kind of stuff. And the more you guys can ask questions, the more fun this is gonna be. So here's our first scenario. High, let's go back. High, considerable. So right away, this forecast says to me like, oh boy, do I even want to go out today? Travel and avalanche terrain is actually not recommended. Okay, so can I identify avalanche terrain? Yes or no? If I can, I can think about going out and finding places that actually are not avalanche terrain. If I can't, this is not a day to be out. I've got wind slabs happening at Alpine and Treeline. Looks like the winds have been out of the west. Oh yeah, you can see new thick wind slabs have started to develop due to strong southwest winds combined with 20 to 30 centimeters of new snow. Okay, that's spooky. That means we could have slabs up to 100 centimeters or more in lee areas where that wind is picking up that fresh snow, moving across the mountain. I'm likely or very likely to trigger these. If I do trigger one, it could be as large as a size 3, so enough to destroy my truck. I don't like this too much. Then I've got storm slabs, and a classic recipe for storm slabs is evolving. Heavy snowfall with rising temperatures. Rising temperatures are never a good sign. Rising temperatures after a storm often indicate that things start to come unglued. They start to add cohesion, or just what you can say lubrication to the underlying weak layers. So heavy snowfall with rising temperatures landing on loose, dry snow. Storm slab avalanches are likely, especially in steep or convex terrain, on all aspects and all elevations. So it's blowing, the temperature is rising. Honestly, if this was me and I was getting up in the morning, I would probably go to the ski hill on a morning like this. Or I probably would go sledding, because a sled allows me to go to places that I can actually be totally out of avalanche terrain. Like if you've ever walked around a flat meadow on your skis with your skins on, it sucks. But go there with a sled and it's actually a pretty good time. But these kind of things happen during our storm cycles all the time. So let's talk a little bit about what your options are. Let's say that you're headed up here. Does anybody know where this is? I wish I had a great prize that I could just give you if you know what it is. Any brave souls there, Nancy?
Somebody's asking Connaught, Rogers Pass, Raven, Connaught.
Yeah. Great. Oh, that person gets a free pair of gloves next time I see them with prizes in hand. This is Connaught Creek. Yeah, exactly. So in this photo, let me get my little highlighter. Oh, great, I've got it. Oh, I don't quite like that one though. There we go. This is Connaught Creek. The highway is just right down here. Now that black's not a very good color, is it? Stand by, stand by. Let's go with a nice bright red. Okay. Highway is right down here. Then this is the highway, oops, that obviously goes from Golden to Revelstoke. And this is Connaught Creek. The standard path, and there's really no other place to go. It goes all the way down here in the valley. It comes all the way up here and gets up eventually to a place called Balu Pass, which is just out of sight up here. North in this image is about this way. Close enough. So what do we think? We've got high avalanche hazard. Natural avalanches are running. What's the thing that just jumps out at us right away about some of these features? Like, let's say we're thinking, yeah, let's go up Connaught. You don't need a permit to go up there. We've been waiting to go to Rogers Pass for days or years. What don't you like about some of these areas? What are these? And you guys can be typing in as I'm drawing these. Nancy will tell us.
We've got train traps, Abbey paths, slide paths, historical Abbey paths, previous big
Yeah,
avalanche paths,
these are
crosses multiple
big
Abbey
avalanche
paths.
paths.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Runout zone,
The
avalanche sheets. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And there's more in here too. So here's the problem with that kind of terrain is that while it might only take you 2 or 3 minutes to walk across here, and sure, you could do your standard protocol and walk across it one at a time and do all the things that we know are the right practice. But, and yes, hospital trees and some of this stuff, Bruin's tree or Ursus trees, I should say, this all looks pretty tasty, but do I want to be walking up this valley when it's like this? No. Like this thing comes down and any avalanche, any small avalanche that starts in here is going to pour right down this path. And it's going to end up intersecting this standard access trail. So what do you do with a day like this? Well, there is still stuff we can do. These trees, if you get across that first path, which you can do pretty quickly, like this, these trees might offer some decent riding today. These trees even might offer you some decent riding. And if you were going to be in here, I would want to try and stay like right on this ridge. I wouldn't get down into too much of this stuff. Reason being, it's just more open, and this avalanche path actually intersects that too. So I'd be staying right on the ridge crest. If you felt comfortable crossing this where this intersects down here, I think you can throw a quick skinner in here for sure, and you can find some great just small lapping to do. I think that the part of the thing that seems to always just enthrall folks when they're out with a guide is how many ideas the guide has. And that's because the guide and the avalanche professional, they have tons of backup options for the day. So say we were under less avalanche danger. This is great. Thank you guys all for playing with me here. I have one. Yeah, we're gonna come back to this. So what I just want to say about having backup plans. This is that train, is a train photo. This, many of you probably recognize as Google Earth. When I started the broadcast, I actually had a Google Earth imagery up, and I've got lines drawn everywhere in Google Earth. This is from Douglas Sproul. These are all Doug Sproul's lines that I've drawn in here from his guidebook. But, while sometimes my day might be to go get up high and get on a summit, sometimes I might find that like, hey, it's a little bit spookier than I expected. So I might come up here and I might just end up lapping trees. Or I might decide to, that, hey, there's a lot of tracks up here. I'm actually gonna get into some of these more obscure trees. I've always got backup plans so that if I get to a point and my idea is to go summit and conditions, let's say it's too windy up here, well, then I'm not just going to go home. I still want to go skiing. So I've always got backup ideas. Now, so I would really encourage you to do this as you create your trip plans. With all my close friends, in fact, anyone I go ski touring with now, or sledding for that matter, I give them an idea of a trip plan. I give them an idea of what I think I want to do, and I will give people, I'll send them my Google Earth files or KMLs or KMZs of some of my ideas, and I'll say, hey, put this in your phone. And most folks, myself included, all run with a GPS program. Almost everyone I know runs with Gaia GPS. I pay for it personally. I think it's phenomenal. I've not used Fat Maps. I know they're coming on the scene in a big way right now too. It used to be you could carry around Google Earth on your phone, but it doesn't work. It doesn't really cache imagery anymore. But I have all this information right at my fingertips with the ability to overlay topo maps on top of it and all these lines drawn in there so I can reference them throughout the day. So I really encourage you guys to have a plan. Were you going to say a question there, Nancy?
There are a couple questions, Grant, that have just come in. They're not exactly related to where you were at, but a question that came in from Dominic. How do rising temperatures affect stability when we get a cold period like we are in now? So from -20 rising to a more normal -5.
Good question. So actually, I just wrote a whole blog about this today that you can find on our forecasters blog at avalanche.ca. The 15-second version of that is that really cold temperatures like this, when it goes from -2 down to -15 or colder, it just gives us what we've got. It preserves our weak layers right now. Cold temperatures don't actually heal snowpacks. Warm temperatures heal snowpacks. So when we get on the other side of this, let me back up a little bit. When the snowpacks are getting colder, less of your weight goes deeper. Your weight is going less. Wow, let me not use a double negative. When the snowpack starts getting colder and the slab starts getting colder, when you stand on a particular piece of snow, your weight is not going as deep as it would when it's warm. So let's say that you're on a particular piece of snow, the snowpack, and it's cold. The snowpack may only feel you down about 50 centimeters. But once it warms back up, your penetration bulb, as we call it, might go as deep as 100 or 150 centimeters. So the answer is that when cold snow, it doesn't feel you as deeply in the snowpack. That's why people commonly say things like it's tightening up. And I mean, we know that from the realm of materials engineering, that the snow is getting stronger in many ways. It's more resistant to fracture. Still possible, of course. But when it warms back up, we're going to be right back into this persistent weakness problem. We've got a buried persistent weakness down there right now. And actually, this slide that I'm going to go into right now is a great example, because this actually is not far off of what the danger rating in Rogers Pass was today. I think this is actually what the danger rating was in the South Columbia today: moderate, moderate, low. And yeah, so that's a great question. Hopefully that answers that. Is there another question that we want to get to before we jump back into this one?
Well, sure. Since it's come in from Rick. Does the forecast equally represent places like Duffy Pass and regions that are in the forecast region but seldomly accessed, given that a lot of min reports are available for one but not the other?
Yeah, okay, great question. Couple things. One, right now, the mins are doing a great job of powering the forecasts. Last year, we had about 2,500 mins over the entire season. At this point right now, we have over, I think it's 4,200 mins to date. So thank all of you for submitting your mins. They're really important right now. One, because people recreate in places that are not normally professional observations. And two, right now, there are a lot of heli skiing and cat skiing operations and guiding operations that are simply not running. And that's where we get a lot of our data for avalanche forecasting. So the avalanche forecasts are certainly biased towards the places where we're getting information from. So somewhere like the South Coast inland, which is where the Duffy is, a couple things. There is the Duffy, which is a pretty popular spot. We get good information from the MIN community, the Mountain Information Network community. We get great information from MOTI, who has a team up there that does avalanche control for the highway. And there's Coquihalla. We also get information from their avalanche team. We get MINs there, but those are two very different snowpacks. But then think about going somewhere towards like Braylorn. That place doesn't have a whole lot of data coming out of it right now. And the casting operations that are normally operating up there are not at the moment. So right now, the forecast, just by its very nature, because we're getting more information from places like the Duffy, like the Coke, it's biased towards those places. So if you're further afield, you might find that conditions vary. And that's really what this is all about. You take the avalanche forecast as a starting point for your day, and then you see if it matches or doesn't match the current conditions well. And I think for the most part, you're going to find that it matches. But as you go further and further out into places that are different and have different geoclimatic regions, meaning they have different snowpacks, you're going to find different conditions that may not match the forecast as well. I think about places like closer to Lillooet, that's much drier over there. It's colder usually. Like that is not going to ski the same way as it does around Joffrey, for instance. So that's a really good question. Maybe I'm going to hold questions there for the moment. And I'm going to go
Let me
through
just
this
give you one more, Grant.
Okay.
Let me just give you one more
sure.
because it has to do with that image that you're looking at right there. The
Okay,
question is, with this example, is there any below tree line in the picture?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Yeah, there is below tree line in this photo. And let me bring my highlighter up. Color. I'm actually going to go green. I would say that all these areas that are dense forest, this is below tree line. Now it's funny because you're right next to like big alpine features, but this is a classical below tree line feature. Now, technically this is even below tree line. And so is this. Now let's look at some areas that are actually tree line. Because as we said earlier, you guys nailed it. Tree line is where there's more open areas than there are trees. So you can see a real distinction from here into here. This is now tree line. In fact, we could just take a big swath and we could say that kind of all this stuff, and it looks like most of this thing, this is all that below tree line elevation band. Kind of like that. And then obviously we have alpine that's above there. Does that help? Is that person's question answered?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. So storm slabs. Now this is the same piece of terrain, obviously. And now we're watching for storm slabs in a variety of aspects and elevation bands. So we still need to think about those, but now our triggering has been reduced to possible. And the size of the avalanche has been reduced to the size 1. With that in mind, I'm willing to go and strut my stuff against a size 1 avalanche. I think that's something I can work with, especially with it being possible. I'm gonna have to find the right terrain feature to trigger that one. But now remember, I'm gonna just north in this is about kind of that direction. Wait, have you guys ever watched Khan Academy? I suddenly have such an appreciation for how those folks draw and talk at the same time. So we know that these, oh, there we go. Okay. We know that these wind slabs are essentially existing on slopes that face this way, north, northeast, east, southeast, south, and even into southwest. Does that make sense? That's the compass rose right there. And it's all those blue things that are lit up is where this problem is. So with that in mind, let's grab a different color here. I think that I'm likely to find wind slabs probably on the lee sides of ridges. So remember the wind in this case is coming like this across the terrain. That's what a west wind does. It's gonna pick up snow here, and it's gonna drop it onto slopes like this. And so this is right where I'm gonna find the biggest wind slab problem is on these features immediately lee of Ridgecrest. Again, you're gonna see it that kind of repeat again through all this stuff, down on the other side of this. I may even find some wind loading if there's been enough wind on these kind of features. So the wind's been coming across, it's been getting held up a little bit by these trees and is depositing wind slabs here, probably here. This is what we call cross loading, when the wind blows across a slope here. But it doesn't sound like these have not been honking winds, although it does say, okay, it says right there, anticipate loading lower on the slope. So the wind slabs are not just be confined to the alpine, they actually are going to be confined to all these places that we're talking about right now. So now, if this is my problem area, and you know, I've still got storm slabs that probably exist up here in the more extreme terrain. You know, probably something like this. I can go find a lot of skiing on a day like today. I might just come along the valley bottom and bebop up to Balu Pass. Whoa, sorry guys. Stand by, technical difficulties. I might be able to think about just going and making some laps. You know, on a day like today, like you don't always have to avoid skiing and avalanche paths. In fact, I don't regularly. You know, the problem that we're worried about right now is small storm slabs and small wind slabs. Like maybe this is your day to come up here, work the trees, pop up into here, work up into the alpine, and make yourself some nice long alpine runs. That would be totally into me right now. The places that I want to avoid are the places with wind slab and probably the more extreme features where I might find that lingering storm slab. You know, if I'm going to do something like this, like I'm going to ski like an obvious avalanche path, I'm going to do that one at a time. When I get to the bottom of it, I'm going to tuck out of that path and get below some trees to regroup in a safe spot. You know, if I'm skiing with a bunch of people, I might have one person ski it, and then I might even have one person pull up somewhere that can be safe and actually watch. So then maybe the third person skis it, and then this person comes and joins us down low. Now, one thing that can be real handy in situations like this is having a radio. Sliders are good at carrying radios. Skiers are only just getting good at it. Carry a radio. Have your friends carry radios. Spend a little money, get yourself a cool microphone for your bag, because that's how you can make this work. So let's say Bob skis first. He comes down here and posts up and he says, okay, Sally, why don't you ski next? Sally skis all the way down. And then Jim, why don't you go ahead and ski next? Because Sally says, hey, I'm clear, I'm out of the way. Jim comes down and skis and they say, hey, Bob, Jim and Sally are all good. Why don't you come down to us? We'll be waiting for you. Boom, he skis. Now, that's a heck of a lot better process than Jim up here yelling, are you okay? Can't you see me? Are you regrouped? You see Jim wildly waving his arms or whatever. Like, be a pro. Have a radio, know how to use it. Don't step on other people's channels. Don't, you know, stay off of the professional channels. But like having a radio is super pro. That's what allows you to do this really well. You know, on a day like today, I might come up here and I might think about like making one lap through the steep trees. If that feels good, I didn't see any snow moving, well, then I might step out a little bit. And I might make my next lap through this kind of, you know, more gnarly avalanche path. And I might ski that out. The thing about moderate is that human triggered avalanches are possible. So you need to understand where the avalanche problem is. We've got a wind slab, we have small storm slabs, and then you need to take that information out in the field. And if you're getting out there and you can take small bites, you know, maybe you start with a smaller run, a little bit bigger run, a little bit bigger run. Maybe by your last run, you're willing to ski something like this because you haven't seen any cracking or womping. The snow just feels soft. You're just having good skiing. The wind slabs are on the other side of the ridge, and maybe that feels fine. You know, I think at Avalanche Canada, we're definitely about empowering you to go out there and ski cool stuff. Like, that's why we all got into this, was to learn how and when to ski cool stuff. So that's what we're trying to empower all of you to do. Little known fact. Any questions while we're still on this Rasta colored terrain image here?
Grant, there's one that's a bit unrelated because we don't have cut blocks up at Rogers Pass, but there's a question about cut blocks. Would a cut block next to dense trees be considered below tree line?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Yeah, by definition, it is below tree line, but cut blocks tend to be surface hoar farms. And if you go through the Mountain Information Network right now, you're going to see a few different photos in there where avalanches are failing on surface hoar. So yes, we're talking about vegetative bands. So yeah, we've logged it. There's a cup block there now, but it's still below tree line. But cup blocks are kind of one of those watch out places where they tend to preserve surface ore. They tend to be steep in the interior mountains and on the coast too, I know. And they can actually be real problems because we've removed all that natural cover from the snow surface. And now they're kind of they're below tree line places that almost, they can behave like alpine slopes, big planar slopes, but they actually get a lot more surface from the alpine. So cup blocks are a place I generally try and avoid. Yeah, even when I'm sledding. Skiing cup blocks just tends to scare me. Great question.
Thanks, Grant. Another question, with this scenario that you're on, with this scenario and lower ratings, are you worried about naturals in the Avi path on the right coming from the wind-loaded ridge left of the bowl?
Okay, Avi path on the right from the wind-loaded ridge, oh, like from this. This, like, am I worried about this thing producing naturals? You know what? Under moderate, I'm not, because, well, we can always, basically, moderate means natural avalanche is unlikely, human triggered avalanche is possible. So by definition, this is something that, you know, I'm actually, moderate tells me that the forecaster doesn't think there's going to be natural avalanches today. So, and also the forecaster is thinking that these avalanches are very small. Like a size 1 that starts here isn't going to run all the way down here. But backing up, like considerable, you know, if it's considerable, let's see, we can find that bowl again. And we're expecting large avalanches, like a size 3, well then heck yeah, that thing might come down and I don't want to be standing there. So still, you know, on a day like today, best to use good travel habits. Like I'm not going to stop and have lunch in this avalanche path. I'm not going to climb up this avalanche path, but I very well may ski it. And that's because the information is telling me that natural avalanches are not expected. All the avalanches that are human triggerable are small. So, you know, even if this thing heats up and some kind of fluke like creates a small avalanche, I don't see it running full path on a day like today. And my time in this path is going to be very limited. You know, I might just be like zigzagging up here, working my way into the path, and then starting my ski all the way down, and I'm going to be clear of this thing pretty quickly. So I'm limiting the amount of time that I'm exposing myself and my group to that avalanche terrain. So great question. And that's why we have avalanche forecasts, so we can make more nuanced decisions from day to day. So that's a really good question. Thank you.
Thanks, Grant. I'll give you one more question. How do you go on very long runs in the Alpine? How do you choose a safe spot to be able to watch out for each other?
Yeah, good question. I wonder if I have a refresh button. I don't know if I can actually do that. Let's use that in, what is this one? It's gonna be a little too dangerous for a long run on the Alpine today. Okay, let me see what I can do with this. Maybe I have erase all ink. That's what we wanted. Great. Okay, got my highlighter. Great. How do you go on very long runs in the Alpine? Well, you don't just show up, because if you're down here and you're like, wow, you can only see to about here. If you're walking down here, you can't see very high up. So you have no idea what's above here. It could just be a giant rock face. That's why the pre-trip planning is so important. To have looked in Google Earth and know about what long runs are available to you. Now you can also go on our website and go to backcountry resources and go to the 8s trip planner. And we've gone out there and 8s rated a number of different places. Of course, not every place throughout Western Canada, but many, many for both skiing and sledding. And in fact, there's 8s ratings for Rogers Pass. And there's a tool on there that can help you understand, like, when is the time to go for these long runs. So if you're unsure, I would suggest going to the trip planner, and I bet that Nancy or Alex can dig up the trip planner link for our website and drop it into the chat. It's just in the top band up there. So you have an idea of what's above you so that you can actually see before you go. So let's say that we look back on this and we decide that, you know, this is a really classic Alpine run and that we want to ski it today. So where are we going to regroup here? Well, first off, we have to think about how we're going to get up it. So actually, one thing that I always do when I'm drawing is I make my up tracks. I don't know why I'm not doing that now. I make my up tracks in red and I make my down tracks in green. And if you look at my Google Earth catalog, I've Google Earth skied extensively throughout the mountains of British Columbia. Okay, so we're coming up here, we're coming up Connaught. Of course, we're still going across this one at a time, still doing best practice, still across this one at a time. And then let's say we get up into a little bit further, we start getting up into the trees. We start setting our up track here. You know, like this is probably a pretty good place where I'm going to stop and have a snack because I'm pretty well out of most of this avalanche terrain. I'm protected by some of these smaller features. So this might be my first regroup spot for my snack. Then I might think about, you know, I'm still worried about those wind slabs here. So I might actually stick to the middle of the bowl and move myself out to somewhere around here. I'm going to do a quick changeover. And then where am I going to go? Well, sometimes, I mean, it's tempting to want to ski the whole run. But then if I ski the whole run, I might go to green. So person 1 skis the whole run. Now they're way down here. Well, if person 2 has any kind of incident up here, like they're not going to be able to assist at all. So I want to be a little bit closer than that. So I'm going to pitch it out. So I might have person 1 ski maybe back down to our regroup spot. And that's a good place to watch. And then person 2 can come along. Let's have a different color, person 2. Person 2 can then come along. She's going to pass person 1, and then maybe she comes down here, and then she can just tuck up right into here. And radio communication makes this all so much better. Then person 3 comes along. They're going to ski. They might get a chance now to ski this all the way because they've got person 1 here and person 2 here. They're going to ski this whole thing all the way through. And they're going to regroup. Then we pick back up with green person because we still have yellow person here waiting. So green person says, okay, I'm going to get it now too. They ski down to the bottom. And then now we only got yellow person left on the slope. Green and blue can call yellow person. And then yellow person can proceed with their run. Everybody's stoked. We've minimized our time in avalanche terrain. Everybody's gotten fresh lines. And that's how you ski long runs in the Alpine. Helpful? Hopefully. Any other questions while we're hanging out around this one?
Oof. Yeah, there's one I think just related to, I've been busy putting links in. There was a question.
Nice.
You said that skinning up the middle of the bowl is a good idea to avoid the wind slab, but wouldn't that mean you are directly in the middle of a potential Abbey path?
Yeah, so let me just, I'll refresh this. And let me grab my up track again. So yeah, my up track was going to come here. And then what was I doing today? I came up through here and then yeah, I'm skinning below tree line into tree line to my regroup spot. And the reason that I'm thinking about skidding in the middle of the bowl is because remember the winds in this case are coming across this thing. And so I know there's going to be a wind slab here. So to your point, and a wind slab here, and a wind slab here. If I was a really conservative person, you know, maybe one way I can work this is actually just working right along here along the edge of the wind slab before I get into the bowl. That's going to be the safest, the absolute safest route. And then I can start to get into wherever I'm going to ski from. But, you know, it's not, at Avalanche Canada, we're certainly not saying not to ski features like this. Like avalanche paths make great ski runs, but you need to go there at the correct time. So if there's natural size 3s running and this whole bowl can rip out and flush down, then that's not the time. But a forecast like this, when I'm worried about small storm slabs and small wind slabs, this is a time that it's totally reasonable to be up in the Alpine, moving efficiently, and then actually skiing the whole thing. We don't always have to stay in the trees by any means. There are conditions when you can get out there and ski big alpine features, and we encourage that. But it's all about knowing your avalanche problem, because these are small avalanches. We're not dealing with big avalanches under like today. So if you have a small avalanche problem, you know, then you can get out there and think about these kind of features. But again, like when we came back to this one, like where we've got these huge, you know, we've got avalanches to size 3 that could very well run full path, then these places are just to be avoided entirely. And that's why we got pushed over here for that day, just making small laps in the trees. Is that helpful? Hopefully.
Grant, there's one more question. I'm not sure which scenario it's addressing. The question is, why did you avoid skinning the diamond-shaped bunch of trees between the two Avi paths?
Oh, good question. You know, I really wasn't avoiding it. This is a good option too. And actually, you know what? This might even be a better option, honestly, because then it keeps you out of this. So yeah, thank you for that. This is a great, I'm not avoiding that. That would be great. Yeah, and then from here, you know, maybe you can like kind of sneak into here, and that would also be a good thing. And one of the beautiful things about the mountains is that everyone kind of has a different style. So this is something that would totally work for you as well. That's a great idea. Good question.
That's great, thanks.
My pleasure. Okay. We don't have all that much time, so I want to actually get into, I know there's a little button here, bear with me. Dun, dun, dun. Let me choose one that I really like. Okay. Let's talk about, we were just in the Alpine for a while there. Let's play with this one for a second. Does anyone know where this is? You have about 5 seconds to answer, which you will receive.
Waterton, Cameron
Great.
Lake.
Nice.
Waterton.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. This is Waterton. There's a lot of really good skiing over here. There's what it looks like in real life. This is an old photo of mine. Okay, does that person know if this burned? I'm assuming it did, but I have not been back since the fire. Let's see what they say here.
Yeah, it did. It did. It burned. Extensive burn all around Cameron.
Yeah, that's too bad. Because now that it's extensive burn, it's going to be real hard to ski there. Burns are also places that are surface horror farms. They're kind of fun at first. They can be eerie, but burns are surface horror farms. This is really similar to this one, and we're just running out of time so quickly that I'm actually going to go to a different place, but thank you for that. Let's go here. Considerable, moderate. We've got large cornices that we're worried about, and warm temperatures are going to weaken them. A falling chunk of cornice could trigger a deeper avalanche on the slope below. There's no new snow, it's -5 and sunny, and it's wind that's just light right now. We got wind slabs here too, behind terrain features, cross the gullies, and they can fail as large and destructive avalanches up to size 3. Those are some big wind slabs. So let's see. Again, in this photo, do I have my pointer? I do. This is north. And we know that wind has been pushing snow this way. So where are we going to find those wind slabs? Well, again, places like this. And on daylight today, when we've got possible very large, we've got possible size 3 wind slabs, I'm just not going to get up into much of any of this terrain. And I'm especially going to be avoiding stuff like this, because you can just see all these little features here. That's what wind loading looks like. That shows us there's been a lot of wind. That it looks fat and pillowy. So on a day like today, you know, with this kind of problem in play, I'm probably going to be hiding in the trees. and I may get up into some features like this and probably try and ski something like this first because it's more treed and it's less angled. Ah, there we go, my danger rating popped up. So the alpine is considerable, meaning that naturals are possible. So that's why I'm avoiding all this stuff. You know, at Treeline, I might start to poke into some real gentle slopes, but I'm going to be really tiptoeing on a day like this. So, you know, this is a time when it's for really conservative travel. So when your forecast looks like this, it's definitely not time to get up into the bigger terrain. That was kind of what we were speaking about earlier. I'm just going to move forward one, and that's going to change the forecast a little bit. So now, let's say it's considerable, moderate, moderate, and we're working with a persistent slab problem. Remember that this is north. Persistent slab layer, a persistent weak layer comprising of surface origin sheltered areas and a crust on solar aspects. Well, all of this is south facing. So that's a solar aspect. South and west faces tend to get a lot more sun than north and east faces do. So we've got, at all elevation bands on all slopes, we have a likely problem. We've got avalanches of size 2, enough to bury, injure, and kill a person. 20 to 30 centimeters below slope, and it's been reacting to human triggers, producing avalanches up to size 2. Well, again, like that probably means that this whole ridge line is out. I'm just not gonna get into any of this kind of stuff. Whoa, whoopsie doodle. But the other thing I'm worried about too, and you actually see it here, are these cornices up here. So we've got a cornice that's formed along here, and it's supposed to be getting warmer. So we must have had some recent north wind. And if one of those cornices, you know, those are those big lips, that, or the noses that kind of hang out over the edge of the mountain. If any of those cornices fail, they could then impact this slope below, and they could trigger this persistent slab avalanche. And then we've got problems. So on a day like today, again, I'll be kind of hiding in the trees here. I think this is pretty similar to the one we just did. Does anyone have any questions as we're kind of sitting in this particular piece of terrain?
Yeah, Grant, there's a few. Let's see. One is based on, it keeps moving. Based on wind direction though, isn't the west facing slope pretty unlikely to have wind slabs? And something related, the wind slab and cornice danger seems to be lower on the west facing aspects. Would you consider skiing a western slope in the Alpine?
You know, that's a great question. I probably wouldn't consider a west facing slope in the Alpine because I know that persistent slab actually exists here. It's highlighted here. A west facing feature, so one that faces off this way, something kind of like this. This is considered, you know, something of a solar aspect. So I just know that there's going to be a persistent slab problem lingering in there, and I'm probably just not going to go do battle with it because I don't want to lose my fragile little, you know, skin body. I don't want to go challenge an avalanche. So I'm probably on a day like today going to go and get into some of these kind of features and probably have a kind of what we would call a meadow skipping day. And I might go up here and kind of walk around and get some good views. But I'm probably not going to get into a lot of great skiing here. Now, this could be a great destination on a day like today because it has a lot of options for me to go up and have a good day on skis. But
hey,
you know,
Grant, can I jump in? I think those questions about the wind slab are referring to the previous scenario where there was a wind slab problem.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, just back you up there.
No, that's actually, you know what? And I changed it on everyone because I bet there. Yeah. So
Okay,
here.
my apologies. It's hard to keep track of. There's a lot of
No,
questions
it is.
coming in, but
Yeah, no,
there's
all good.
one that I know pertains to this one. In this picture, what's the danger below tree line from avalanche terrain above?
Great question. So I can answer both those pretty quickly here. One, with wind slabs, yeah, all this west facing stuff, I would consider skiing that. So thank you, Alex and Nancy, because the wind is actually pushing snow across. And so it's forming wind slabs on these kind of features. So remember, this wind, you can see the west facing thing, the west facing piece of terrain. This is not this doesn't have a wind slide problem. The wind's pushing this way. And so I would probably be pretty comfortable, in fact, finding a place to sneak around somewhere like this. So what I'd probably do on a day like today would be I'd work up into here. I'd work along this big broad ridge. Oh boy, now I'm getting into some weird thin spots that I might not be that excited about. Okay, we're not gonna go there. I decided that I'm turning around. What I'd probably do is start working my way up into here and gathering information about the snow as I start to travel in here, because I'm getting into some bigger, broader terrain that's gonna be more affected by wind. And when I get to somewhere like this and kind of regroup out of avalanche terrain, you know, this is a weird time because it's considerable in the alpine, but that really is driven by problems that are facing north and east. So, you know, I could try my luck at something like this, but what I would probably do is I'd probably go find a different piece of terrain that had more tree line skiing. So what I would actually like to see is maybe some stuff like this, and this might just be fun to go do some mini golf laps on, like something like this. It's west facing. Looks like it might be some fun skiing, and maybe I can go up here and just like make some fun little mini laps. But I might try and just find a different place entirely. And time is going by so quickly. I wanted to show one more. We talked a lot already about, well, let's talk about this real quick. This is a spring scenario. When we rate avalanche danger, we have all agreed as avalanche centers to rate the avalanche danger for the highest part of the day. And so the way that snow works, when we get into a big melt freeze cycle in the spring, we're getting good freezing overnight, it really locks the snowpack up. So it's gonna say considerable. But if you dig into the details, it says loose wet avalanches are expected during periods of daytime warming and during periods of rain showers. Overnight freezing levels above 1,200 meters should develop a hard crust that may deteriorate during the day. Well, reading between the lines, that says that early morning when that crust is firm, it's going to be good to go. It's going to be low danger, actually. And it probably says more about that in this forecast, like in the details. Wet slab avalanches are expected during periods of daytime warming and during periods of rain showers. So when we start looking at that in this piece of terrain, these are all problems that are going to happen during the heat of the day. So if I can play my cards right and be in a good location, I can ski almost anything in this photo so long as it's frozen. And that's why in the spring, if you're gonna go corn skiing, let's say you're wanting to go get on top of this summit. That might be a totally okay objective, but here's the catch. You need to have gotten yourself from valley bottom all the way up on top of this thing, using ski crampons probably. And you need to be there at about, assuming we're getting a good overnight refreeze, you need to be there nice and early. And then just as the sun's coming out, you're gonna feel the snow surface start to get a little bit moist, which makes that great corn skiing. Then you can ski this whole line, and you can ski it in low hazard because you're just skiing on that nice hard refrozen crust. That's corn skiing. And then you're not worried about it. But that means you have to have a really early start. You're on top of things when it's just getting light, or into the that's when you get a good overnight refreeze and temperatures are going to stay reasonably cool. Then you can ski big stuff in the spring where your only hazard is maybe falling or on one of these features, or maybe it's rockfall or more alpine objective hazard. That's just a quick note about how it works in the spring. So although you might see, because we're rating it for the highest part of the day, which we often say explicitly because it's confusing to folks, if you can get there darn early and you're skiing it just as it's unfreezing, just as that surface is unfreezing, great. Now let's say you go out and have some beers with your buddies the night before and you decide to get up at 8 and you get to right here and you step out of your skis and you plunge up to your waist in loose, wet, unfrozen snow. Well, you just missed the whole thing. You need to go home right away, because the idea in the spring is to stay on that hard refrozen surface. So as you start to see like little roller balls, those little things that are rolling down the slopes, where you see recent avalanches, or you can just step onto the snow and you can sink into it. you're too late. It's time to go home. So I just want to kind of drill that point home. I got one more to think about. Low, low, low. Wind slabs are getting old and tired, but you may still find the odd rider triggerable wind slab in lee locations near ridgetop. This light wind, cloudy, -8, 2 centimeters of new snow. It sounds awesome. The only problem that we're really worried about here are wind slabs. So, you know, I might be worried about wind slabs pushing me around in really big features. So if I manage to get myself up something like, and be on top of something like this, well, even if I trigger a very small avalanche, it's gonna have a huge consequence in a piece of terrain like this. So you're thinking about that. You're thinking about slough management. You're thinking about carefully working those kind of features. But this is all kind of like super gnarly terrain over here. Maybe this is the day, low hazard, where you work your way up this. You can then think about making a lap into here. Maybe your next lap of the day is working your way up into this. Let's say you feel good about things, you drop down here. Like you can have all sorts of fun on a day like today. Maybe this is low hazard, then you ski this thing all the way out. Or maybe you decide that you really want to get into this feature, and so you come down to the bottom, you work your way up in the trees, and you drop into it here the first time. The second time you decide, you know what, it's looking a little bit better, and I'm actually going to go get it from just a little bit higher even. Gathering information as you go. Or maybe you just decide that you're gonna start here, skin up this thing, and then ski this big avalanche path. Like that kind of activity is totally permissible under low hazard. And just remembering that low hazard doesn't mean no hazard, because we talked about those wind slabs in extreme pieces of terrain. You know, you need to be wary of those, and you need to be managing your terrain in a way so that you know that you're not going to get pushed into something that you can't work with, because a wind slab, you know, here might push you into this huge cliff, or a wind slab here might push you across this cliff even when you intend to ski this line. But the point of that is that low hazard is a time to go and get after it. And I'll put one more plug in. As someone who spends a lot of time thinking about bicycles, I can be victim to this spring fever where it's like, okay, it's spring, it's time to go ride bicycles. But the best skiing of the year and the safest skiing is often in the spring. The snowpack is fat, it's usually less dynamic, the travel's good, the days are long. So I would encourage you, before you start thinking about rock climbing and bicycles and all that good stuff, like, remember the skiing is good late, and that can be some of the safest time to go out and get into big terrain, if that's what fills your dreams. So it's been an hour that we've been doing this. There are almost 400 people on the call, which is incredible. I'll stick around and answer questions for a little bit here. And then we'll talk about what happens next week, and we'll kind of wrap up the evening. But let's get into questions for just a few more minutes here. Do we have any from the floor,
Yeah,
Nancy?
sure, Grant. There've been a couple questions regarding spring skiing in terms of like a ballpark, like what's the ballpark hour to get onto the summit? When do you start? When does solar input typically begin?
Yeah, it becomes a different game because you're managing a few things, but earlier is always better. So, you know, I think a lot of days around here, like I'm typically in the spring, like kind of like, let's say Mount Begbie is a great example. It's this big feature that kind of overhangs town. I try and go ski it in the spring often. It's just such a fun day. So a day like that, like I've got my pack all sitting out ready to go. You know, I'm usually looking at the ideal conditions are going to be when it's going to be nice and cold during the day and clear skies. Clear skies actually allow the sun to get down onto the snow surface and just loosen up the very surface of it when you get the timing right. But overcast skies can actually just keep the sun from getting down in there, and they can make it so that you don't ever really get corn skiing, you just get crust skiing. For a long time, there was Powder magazine, of course, and there was Crust magazine, but it turns out that it was just not nearly as popular. So you're not trying to go ski crust, you're trying to go ski corn. So you're probably gonna get up at something like around, I don't know, 2:30 in the morning, probably like have a little bit of food, be heading out the door at like 3:30, kind of unloading a sled at like 4:30. Sun's starting to come up now around as I'm kind of getting off the sled. I'll be skinning and I'll be into the Alpine by, 6 or 7, hopefully like on top of the summit, somewhere before 9. You want to be up there nice and early. Now, different slopes heat up at different times of the day. So obviously like first thing in the morning, west facing, excuse me. So sun is obviously streaking across. So you're gonna get east facing slopes tend to heat up quick in the very beginning, and then you're getting into like north, south, and then west. So it kind of like the sun kind of tracks around the compass. And I think Bruce Tremper does a great job of explaining this in his book. The most recent version of his book, Managing Avalanche Terrain, kind of talks about how to do this the right way and the mechanics of it. But you want to get there early, and what you're looking for is for that very surface bit, like the first centimeter or two, to become unfrozen. But here's the catch: if you're standing up here waiting for things to become unfrozen in the shade, and your intended line is actually going to be in the sun, you've got to be thinking about, like, is this lower elevation stuff that's actually a different aspect? Is that warming up? Because you don't want to get it wrong. You don't want to wait for the sun to actually hit the shady bit, and then you come down here and find out like, oh, it's actually really wet and loose down here, and you're triggering wet, loose avalanches, and it's sloppy and it's not fun. So it's a challenging game. It depends on the aspect that you're going to ski, and you really have to know your line and do your homework. So you gotta know exactly what you want to do. You gotta be looking for the right conditions. You need a really good overnight refreeze, and then you need to be up there really early and be in a position where you can ski down early before it gets wet and too loose. Spring skiing.
Hey, thanks, Grant. I have another not related to spring skiing. The question is, do you think revision to the 8s in national parks, as per Grant Statham, will be here next season or the season after? Looking forward to the 8s 0 classification for snowshoers.
Wow, that person is in touch. I feel like that might actually be Grant Statham just plugging his own product. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, no, it is a really important classification to find places that are just not avalanche terrain. And yeah, as I'm sitting here drawing, cool lines for skiers, like this would not be that fun to go snowshoeing, but snowshoeing can be a darn good time. And I wish I had a photo of somewhere on the coast here. I don't know when that's going to be coming out. 8s ratings are not part of my game, but you can be sure that we will be talking about it when that is out. So thank you very much for that great and very informed question. And yeah, I think that there are, that being said though, there are a lot of places that are simple terrain that are mapped for parks, and obvious avalanche paths are mapped, and that would be my resort. That would be where I would start. I'm sure that a person who's that informed is probably already aware of that, but just a good reminder that there is 8 rating. Seeking out simple terrain free of overhead hazard can be a great place to go snowshoeing in the right conditions. And if you have any questions about that, go to our website, use the trip planner, and you can match the current danger ratings and conditions to the terrain. Good question.
Thanks. Another one. How do we manage the spooky moderate in the Kootenay boundary? Is staying in lower angle trees a pretty safe bet?
Ha! The boundary is special right now because trees are harboring a lot of serposaur. So I would encourage you to go read the blog that I wrote today. Go to avalanche.ca. Nancy can probably find a link to the forecaster blog, and I literally just wrote a few pages about how I think you can how you can work with scary moderate. So I'm gonna free up room for other questions, and I won't go into that because I literally just put my best work into that, and I would encourage you to read that, and hopefully you find that helpful.
Great. One from Stephen. Over the years, the forecasts seem to have gotten away from speaking about the quality of the snow i.e. not talking about last week's crust if it's not avalanche related. Is this on purpose? Why? We want to know where the POW is and be safe.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we don't. Yeah, let's see. I've been at Avalanche Canada. This is my 10th season there now. And yeah, I do see what you're saying about how we don't talk about ski quality as much anymore. But here's a little way to read between the lines. If you can avoid what we're talking about, like if you're, so say the problem is wind slabs. Turns out wind slabs are not very fun to ski. So if you can avoid wind slabs, you're probably actually going to be finding the best possible snow, because by avoiding wind slab, you're going to be going into sheltered trees, trees at and below tree line. That's where the best skiing is going to be during a wind slab. If we're talking about crust, well, by avoiding solar aspects, you're going to be pushed on to the polar, the north and east aspects, and you're probably going to find the good skiing there too. So I think that if you can read between the lines, if you can actually avoid the avalanche problems, you're probably going to be just by default going to where the skiing and riding is best, actually. And we still talk about it. I mean, I still talk about it in my forecast all the time because I agree. You know, we're trying to help people have a good, safe time out there. So also, if you have a question, pop into one of our social channels, hit us up with a question. Like, we're always happy to answer those kind of things too. But by avoiding the avalanche problem, you're actually going to be finding the safest and probably the best riding conditions.
Great. Another question from Bob. Ski cut or not to ski cut?
Oh God. Bob. Ski cutting is a blood sport. Ski cutting catches people off guard all the time. So what's a ski cut? I demonstrate one here. Virtually demonstrate one here. Here's the place. So let's say that your idea is that you want to ski this. You might travel up this ridge, and then you're gonna get to somewhere like here. Actually, yeah, let's say you travel the ridge and you're sitting here. Your plan is to ski this avalanche path. If one was going to ski cut this, one would probably get a tootle over here, and then they would find a place where they could actually kind of get into the start zone with enough speed to carry across and get to a safe place. Hopefully there is one on the other side. So what do you need to do to have a ski cut? Well, Bruce Jameson wrote a really great paper on ski cutting and whether or not recreationists should be ski cutting. And he, if you do a Google search for Bruce Jameson ski cut, I'm sure you'll find this paper. It's only a couple of years old. He actually outlines conditions where you should and should not ski cut. So go take a look at Bruce's research. That's from Bruce, and I think Ilya and a few other folks surveyed hundreds, if not thousands, of professionals like myself who have done a lot of ski cutting to boil down a data set and make recommendations. So there's a time and a place for ski cutting. It's nuanced. Not every time is right for ski cutting. Not every avalanche problem is right for ski cutting, but I think if you go and read Bruce J's paper there, again, Bruce Jameson, ski cut, you're going to find the paper. That will lead you down a path of understanding when is the right time to think about a ski cut.
Great, thanks. Another question, how often do you ski terrain aspects that you didn't skin up on? Does this feel spooky? Do you often walk onto it to dig or check snow?
Good question. All the time, actually. Yeah, so it kind of depends on the avalanche problem though too. Like if I'm needing to gather more information about the slope before I want to ski it, then it's going to be best to be climbing that aspect, because you can be working trees in safe places and actually, digging down and trying to figure out what's what. So if you have a question, then you're probably going to need to actually see some of that terrain. So for instance, if I want to ski this, and I'm not sure about it, let's say that I'm kind of worried about like some type of deeper storm slab, or I'm worried about that there might be wind slabs down here that might be reactive. well then I'm gonna ski up. And if I chose to ski up this thing, I don't think you could skin up this thing, but just suspend disbelief for a second. Then I'm right into it, and I actually haven't gathered any information about this slope. So a better plan, if I want to ski this, is probably to be coming into here, maybe kind of walking on the edge of this thing, kind of getting a little bit of information, and then getting up a little bit higher, getting a little bit of information. And if it still feels good to go, now I've had a number of different sample spots that I can feel better about it. Same if I'm planning to ski this, but I want to get to know a little bit more about that, then maybe as I work my way up here, I could be digging a few holes in this thing. But as you can see, there's a problem here. The places that I'm digging are actually in the trees, and this is actually a big piece of terrain that could have a lot of wind in it. Now, I think in that question too, you asked, like, if I walk up this thing, would I want to dig in the top of this to decide if I was going to ski it? Hell no, because I want to be pretty confident about skiing a line like this big and this exposed before I dig myself one little hole here to decide if I like it, because the conditions right here are going to be different than the conditions right here, and they're going to be quite a bit different than the conditions down here. So I don't want to dig one hole and think like, oh, I didn't get any results, so I'll just jump in. That's not how snow profiles work. If you're going to dig a snow profile, you need to have a really an objective. So when I'm digging my profiles down here, I'm going to be testing to say like, okay, I'm looking to see if the surface ore is present here. I'm not going to try and dig one hole at the top of this thing and have it be the one thing that tells me what I can do with my whole day, and that pushes me into terrain that I'm not already comfortable with. So I think you would be surprised if we went skiing together how few holes I'm going to dig in the snow. I'm really looking, I'm for the deeper problems, I'm often not digging for those problems. So if I know that there's a persistent slab problem, then I just don't go into big places. I might stick to the trees. If there's a storm slab problem that I'm thinking about, and I'm thinking about maybe like trying to get it stepping out just a little bit, well then the holes that I dig as we move along here, like you're not even gonna have time to put on some, again, stream of consciousness here, but if I've got a storm slab problem that's down 25 centimeters, I'm just gonna be pulling on the snow with my hand or doing really quick little tests as we move along here. And the tests are going to be so fast that you're not even going to have time to put on your puffy jacket, because that test only tells me about how the snow is right here. And so I'm going to try and gather as much information as I can as we ski up here, so that by the time I get to the top, I've already done, maybe 10 hand shears or 10 really shallow compression tests. It's not like I just dig once here and once here and call it good, because I need to understand the nuance of the snow. So I'm trying to get the pattern of what's happening out there. So yeah, again, digging snow profiles is really to confirm what you already know or answer a very specific question. I'm never digging a snow profile to think like, oh, let this tell me all about the snow here. For those kind of bigger questions, I'm managing terrain appropriate for the avalanche problem. Hopefully that helps.
Super, thanks. I've got another question. I don't recall if you said you use Gaia, but the question is, what layers do you use on the Gaia maps or filters?
Oh man, well, yeah, really good question. I play with every spot I go to because it seems like the satellite overlays are different. So I know like some places I'll be looking at a satellite overlay that'll be like, oh boy, I should just get my phone out. Let me just fire up Gaia here. I know that for some places, I've not seen it in Canada, they have all these new layers that are like fresh sat that are supposed to be fresh satellite imagery, but I haven't found that works very well. I use Canada Topo as one of my cached layers all the time because topo lines are great, and also the names of things are helpful. The world imagery map is something I use a bunch. I also use satellite topo with meters on its own sometimes, and satellite with labels. But it is wild how different like the MapQuest satellite compared to the Mapbox compared to the OpenStreetMap imagery will be for a particular place. So the night before, what I do is I've got my Google Earth. Here, I'll just show you what I'll drop this a little bit. I've got my Google Earth. Let me just try this. if I move this, no, it's not gonna work. Okay, disregard. I have got Google Earth fired up with all the lines that I'm thinking about skiing for the day. And let me just go back into my presenter view here. Oh boy. Okay, one sec. I will promise that I will come back to this. Okay, so what I do, my workflow is I take my lines in Google Earth, I go to Gaia online, backing up. I take my Google Earth file, I download or save a folder of the area I'm going to. Then I go to Gaia GPS, I upload that folder, then I open the Gaia on my phone, and I look at the places I'm going to go skiing, and I just try the different layers on there. So I try some of the different satellite layers until I find one I like, because in some places I actually get winter imagery. And so it's not that I use a standard one, I just kind of hunt and peck through them. But the ones that I use the most are MapQuest satellite. And it's funny, they look different when you have them loaded. So let me just tell you exactly. Esri, that's what I was looking for. Esri World Imagery is one of my go-tos. Canada Topo, and I'll often, for sledding, I use the Backroads Mapbook snowmobile trails because it has some cool ideas in there. But I also use the MapQuest satellite and the satellite topo meters, which is a Gaia GPS, Esri, and OpenStreetMap product. That one's pretty cool too. So there you go, getting me to explore my inner GIS dork.
Hey Grant, there's a question about it would be great to know how to manage terrain when you have a persistent slab problem.
It sure would be. It's a tough thing to go out there and do, and it takes experience. But don't we have a course that's almost specifically for that, Nancy?
Well, the AST2 is a great course to take.
The AST2 is a great course to take because it allows you to go out there and get in terrain, do this kind of trip planning, and get good at this stuff. And I can't, managing persistent slabs really means sticking to well-supported features that are free of overhead hazard. And that rolls off the tongue real nicely, but it may not be as obvious to you as you're learning it. So I would just really encourage you to, if you want to start getting out there and figuring out how to work with terrain, take an AST2. Hire a guide for the day. Well, I think this is a place where guides are totally underutilized. But if you've done, let's say you're one of those people on the call who has already taken an AST2 and wants a little bit of a refresher, hire a guide for the day and tell them that you want to get better at managing avalanche terrain during a persistent slab. And they're going to go out there and show you all the tricks that they use, and you'll probably learn a ton. So I encourage you just to first get an AST2. Second, think about hiring a guide. And there's lots of other great resources out there for managing avalanche terrain. So yeah,
Cool.
It can be figured out. It's not just a black box.
So I've got one more here. On aspects exposed to wind, i.e. west-facing slopes with winds coming from the west, do any real problems develop with the sandblast compaction crust forming effects?
Usually just bad skiing, to be honest. But sometimes wind press snow, for the most part, no. Where it's challenging is at a time like this, because in Arctic outflow, one of the signatures of Arctic outflow is actually east and northeast wind. And so if you're going to go along with the mindset that in British Columbia, almost all of our onshore flow, or the storm track that makes good skiing, comes from the west, kind of the west, southwest, northwest, and you think west-facing slopes should be good to go from a wind perspective, well, then you can get lured into complacency about times like this when you've actually got east and northeast wind. They're actually putting slabs on top of those same slopes. So slopes that are facing the wind or windward slopes, those are generally not the places that we're worried about wind slab. But of course, as I just explained, there's exceptions. And for west-facing slopes, solar tends to be one of the bigger inputs there. And then of course, you have a crust down there, you put new snow on top of it, we got a problem. So, but great question. We did a good job of going. We're only 25 minutes over right now. But
you're awesome.
I can't believe it. 300 people we're still here, and I really appreciate it. thank you all so much for joining us here this evening. I'm going to turn it over to Alex here, and he'll wrap us up for the evening.
Yes, thanks so much, Grant. That was awesome, and I love seeing so many questions come in. I don't think we got through as many scenarios as maybe we thought we would, but that's because everybody just kept firing away, and it's really great to see the curiosity and the engagement. So yeah, thanks, Grant. I think I'll let you go now, and I'll just close things off. Yeah, I guess, pretty stoked on that myself. I think a lot of times people only look at the danger ratings, when they start or plan their day. They look at, is it red, orange, yellow, green, or black? But I think one thing is we really learned today was how good it is to look at the avalanche problems and how key they are to choosing the right terrain. And then you couple that with the information, the danger rating, to help formulate the best trip plan. So yeah, great stuff to learn there. If you want to learn more, there's a lot of resources on the Avalanche Canada website. That's avalanche.ca, where you can learn more about avalanche safety and how to plan your trips into the backcountry. A great place to start is our new online avalanche tutorial, Avi Savvy. Here you're going to find, you'll find these great interactive route choice exercises that were made by Simon Fraser University, and they let us appropriate them for Avi Savvy. So if you go to the avalanche forecast section in there, you can learn all about the avalanche forecast and then do those exercises at the end. So highly recommend those. Yeah, anyways, to wrap things up, we really appreciate your interest in avalanche safety. You can support these programs like these webinars by donating as little as $10 to Avalanche Canada. Nancy is going to share a link in the chat box where you can follow it to make a donation. Our next webinar is same time next week, Thursday, February 18th at 7 p.m. This one is going to be, it's called the South Rockies Snowpack Update and Crowdsourcing for a Better Backcountry Community. So as the name implies, this will be focused a bit on the South Rockies region, but I think there's going to be something there for everyone. So we really encourage you to sign up. Our presenters are going to be Jen Coulter, who is the field team leader for our South Rockies team, and I believe she's also the head instructor with the Canadian Avalanche Rescue Dog Association. So, just throwing it out there. The other presenter is going to be Simon Horton, who is a forecaster and a postdoctorate researcher with the Avalanche Research Program at Simon Fraser University, and he is probably one of the smartest people in the Canadian avalanche industry. So that should be a great webinar next week, and we hope to see you there. You'll learn more about the conditions there, a lot about the Mountain Information Network and building community, and why it's important to share your experiences online so everybody can stay safer. Pre-registration is required. Anyways, thank you so much for coming out, everybody. We hope you enjoyed this webinar, and we hope you have a great rest of winter, enjoying the backcountry safely. Good night.